Hello and welcome to another Optoec Enhanced Vision webinar. Today I'm very pleased to announce I'm being joined by Graham Findlay, who's the Chief Executive Officer, get my tongue in there, of North East Sensory Services up in Aberdeen.
Hi Paul,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm fine, and how are you?
I'm great, yeah.
Good to see you after, it's been a long time, so since I think it's been pretty much a year, so and what a year. What a year!
Yeah.
So first of all, as normal with the joint broadcasts, I'd like to ask for the benefit of our watchers what NESS is all about, and maybe you could give us a little bit of insight to its history.
Okay, happy to do that, Paul. Yeah, NESS, or North East Sensory Services, and the clue is in the name. So we cover the northeast of the country, which we would say is Scotland. So the northeast of Scotland, which our services come from as far south as Dundee, right through up to Moray, and Moray borders on Highland. So it's it's about a sixth of the Scottish landmass that we are covering. We've got 6,500 service users, and there's a mix. There's a mix between people who are blind, visually impaired, and people who are deaf, hard of hearing, and also a large chunk of people in there who have got dual sensory loss. May not be registrable, but a significant sensory loss that's having an impact in their lives. But that's the new story. That's a recent history of what the NESS does.
Okay.
We'll go back in time to 1879, and the organisation was set up then as the Aberdeen Town and Counties Association for Teaching the Blind at Their Homes, which just rolls off the tongue.
It really does.
And I've got some subtitles here as well. You can see.
Oh, brilliant. That. Oh, wow. That is a name.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it just? And that is actually the plaque from the front door of the original building that the organisation worked out of. It's I keep saying it's a bit like a Statue of Liberty. It's great. It's green now, but when it was set up, it was like brass, you know. Yes. So it needs to be clean. So, but there's something about just leaving it as it is. So 1879. So 141 years old, the charity, second oldest charity based in the northeast of Scotland, and others have come and gone, but NESS is still here. The organisation was set up originally by, very Victorian, set up. The three key areas was to provide visitors, to provide scriptures, and to support people to find employment. So the last one would have been ahead of its time, although back in the day it would have been basket weaving and maybe like a workshop for the blind or something like that. But so that was the three areas that NESS was set up to do. So, and what we would say is today, well, the organisation was set up today. What we would say is today we do all of those, talking books, etc., as opposed to just providing scriptures. But we provide a whole range of one-to-one support through volunteers and a host of other things. And we also have an employment service as well to support people to either retain or return or find a job as well. So these three things are a small part of what the organisation does. NESS, that, as I said, 141 years old. Mm-hmm. We in the first maybe 5 or 6 decades, it continued on, everything being run by volunteers, and then the organisation then started to provide contracted services for local authorities. In 1968, we started with the Social Work Scotland Act, started to provide a social work service for blind and partially sighted people at that time. Okay. That is still a core service, and very few third sector organisations and very few third sector organisations in sensory impairment provide actual social work, but we've got a team of social workers. Yes. We've got 4 contracts currently, and 3 of the 4 contracts has a social work element to them. So that's core to what we do. And then the organisation changed its name bizarrely in the 1980s. So it was still the Aberdeen Town and Counties Association for Teaching the Blind at Their Homes. And there's a quiz at the end of this, Paul, just to see if you've remembered that. That was a name until early 80s, and we became Grampian Society for the Blind.
Yes.
And then around 11 years ago, we changed our name again. We introduced an operational name, North East Sensory Services, or NESS for short. And that was when we started to develop and provide services for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So that brings us right up to date. But within that, there's a whole host of services that NESS provides.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, covering a large area geographically on that side as well. Okay, so addressing the elephant in the room, which we always get into, with the pandemic, how have you as an organisation been affected by the, multiple lockdowns as we've all been in now?
Yeah. Obviously back in March when Boris made his announcement, we closed down the following day, basically. We had some staff up at that point working from home who might have been classed as in a vulnerable category, either for themselves or if someone who they lived with was potentially needed to be shielded. But yeah, I mean, who could have ever predicted this thing? And a lot of our services are, we would say, crucial or lifeline services. One of our projects, for instance, CIS, it's called Connect, Include and Support. It's for lonely elderly people who live on their own, who are socially isolated, and we bring them together as a group, either in their local community or within the resource centre. That covers 2 of the geography areas where we are operating in. So that's Aberdeen and Moray. We've got different versions of that in Dundee and Angus as well, support groups and so on. But that had just to be knocked in the head straight away. Now, we did try, obviously, straight away, we identified who our most vulnerable service users were and looked at how could we support them. We also had to be really, as a management team, I've got a fantastic staff team, management team, but throughout the organisation, absolutely brilliant. People were so willing to do what they could. And even people who we had to say to them, look, really, we're going to have to furlough you here because you just can't do your job just now. What we did do as well, which I know not all organisations have done or been able to do, is we did top up people to 100%. So from the 80% we were able to do that. We weren't able to furlough that many people because 60% of the business that NESS does is through statutory contracts. So if you're funded through statutory contracts, you can't furlough because you're getting double counting then. So we've got 55 staff, so we furloughed 12 people. And we're grateful to them for being so easy to work with and accommodating that. And we're really grateful to all of our staff for being so flexible and doing jobs that weren't theirs. So for instance, we've had people go out and, it may not sound much, but we were doing in early days, and we still are, doorstep deliveries of hearing aid batteries.
Okay.
So if you're a hearing aid user, as many of our service users are, and those who come to us with a sight loss because of the age-related element of sensory loss, many of them have poor hearing. If you can't hear or you're relying on a digital hearing aid and you can't get your hearing aid batteries, then that was a lifesaver for many folk, delivering the hearing aid batteries to them on their doorstep and doing that. And staff
Absolutely.
Willing to do that, not their job, but willing to do that. We did that across the areas that we cover. We also developed some services, and there's a service that we call Here to Help, and I'll get on to some of the sight loss services in a minute, which I know is more specific interest to perhaps the people.
Yeah, no, feel free to discuss anything you wish. Absolutely.
But the Here to Help service is a service that's run by mainly by volunteers, and basically people come in to our organisation, our resource centres. With 3 resource centres, one in Dundee, one in Aberdeen and one in Elgin. And people can come in, their hearing aid is maybe needing a service, if you like, a clean, a retubing, new batteries and so on. and off they go. Well, because our resource centres had to close straight away, that was something that we just couldn't do. So so what people could do is they could send their hearing aids into the audiology clinic, but they had to leave them for 4 days before anybody would look at them for COVID. Yeah. And then they would do the repair and then send them back. So people might be 10 days to a fortnight without their hearing aid. How awful would that be?
Yeah, that's
so what we did is, so what we introduced was what we called, well, it was a here to help service, but it was a rapid here to help service. So what we did was we put staff out, their hearing aid in a tray for us, with all the PPE and everything else. Everything was kept secure, brought it back in. We've got volunteers who did the work, all in their own homes and everything else, but kitted out with all the right kit and everything else. And we got that back to people on the same day.
Oh, brilliant.
So that was life-changing for folk as well.
Yeah, and that, as you say, I mean, in some cases that is still vitally important, but actually so is the connection of just even being able to, even if it was on somebody's doorstep at the other end of the garden, to be able to say, hi, how are you? Not just a voice on the phone or whatever. So, and that's been so important as well. I mean, that's a subject which, never mind the pandemic, the social side of it is a subject to itself. Yeah. So So no, that's brilliant.
Yeah, the social isolation is really tough for folk.
Yeah.
And if people can't get out because they can't see very well or can't see at all, they might be elderly, they might be frail, they might live on their own, they might have a comorbidity. Every chance they'll have poor hearing as well. So, that lifeline services that we've provided through staff and volunteers has been crucial to keep folk sane, really. So yeah, there's been lots and lots of good stuff has been going on during this period, and as I say, the flexibility of staff has been incredible. We set up for our British Sign Language users. We've got our own interpreter that works for NESS as well, and she developed a video skills and editing skills and everything else. So we set up a Facebook page for British Sign Language users, so they can go to that Facebook page and get daily updates of what's going on. And some of that is important videos from, say, the Scottish Government information videos, and some of it is our own stuff as well. We've continued to keep in touch with visually impaired people. We are now back. Scotland has still got the tier system, so we're not locked down at the moment.
No.
So the tier system here in Aberdeen, it's tier 2, and Murray, it's tier 1. So they're in a good place. Aberdeenshire, where we don't have a statutory contract at the moment, but we still provide some of our added value charitable services into Aberdeenshire. Yeah. That's tier 2. Angus is tier 2. Dundee has moved to tier 3, which is tighter still. But we've been able to maintain our resource centres. They reopened a few months ago with all of the safety features. Yes. We early doors, I think it was way back in May, we developed an exit strategy on how we would look at when we got the green light to start to open things up.
Okay.
How NESS would go about that. So that was introducing policies and procedures, providing some training and everything to staff. And we got recognised by the Scottish Government for doing such a good job. So, and that apparently our exit strategy has popped up all over the country now, which is great.
Oh, well, there we go. Great. There we go. Yeah, absolutely. There's always a nice bit of flag waving involved with that as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's good. That's good. It's good to hear that you've been so positive and forward thinking through this, because obviously I know there's a lot of organisations out there who obviously really struggled to try and fight through a way forward in this one. So it's really positive to see some of the work that you've been doing and continue doing on that side as well. So regarding some of the events and some things, I did notice you've also had some events like a whisky tasting, which is something that got my attention immediately. So what sort of things in that respect, including the whisky, what other things have you been doing?
Well, on that point, of course, it's a virtual whisky gin and whisky tasting, which means, Paul, if you had been a bit quicker off the mark, you could have joined that. But hey, if it was sold out straight away, so it looks like we will be repeating that.
Good. Well, I'll join it. I'll join the second one.
We've been very lucky in that we've brought in a couple of new fundraisers, and our community fundraiser actually just started a week before lockdown, so she got in under the wire. Now I know a number of third sector organisations furloughed their community fundraising. We felt that was not the right thing to do. So although we're big events, we always do a black tie event every year. That got knocked on the head, and some of our big summer events got knocked on the head, and so on as well. It's been a real struggle for charities, but we felt we needed to keep a profile up. And Lynn, our community fundraiser, she's run, and she's done a number of smaller events. We've done appeals and so forth as well. We've done online raffles and so forth. This whisky and gin tasting is on this Friday, and we've got a couple of experts coming in, and so you could choose what you wanted. You pay your fee, you get delivered to your house a box with a selection of whiskies or a selection of gins, and on the night the experts will take you. So I'm guessing they will separate us into rooms for those that are on gin and those that are on whisky, and then they will give you the history, the story behind it, what to look out for, all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You'll get some tasting notes, and it's probably a good idea to separate, because otherwise it could get pretty messy if you've got.
we don't want a gin tasters on the side of us. That's the thing. So one of the things that the London Marathon was postponed, if you like, and a personal story at the beginning of lockdown. So I do a bit of running and go to the gym a lot, and I've got my sighted guide. Thankfully, I was out this morning running with my guide this morning before work, and it's one of the girls at work with a fantastic guide. So we were out today, and guide running became a thing again, maybe about 6 weeks ago. That was allowed again here in Scotland. But at the start of lockdown, I bought myself a treadmill, and so we did a 2.6 challenge instead of the London Marathon. So, 10Ks is usually my limit, there or thereabout. I've done a couple of half marathons, but 10Ks has been my limit. So I signed up to do the 2.6. So I did a marathon over 4 sessions in a week. So and I remember at the start of lockdown, managed to get my treadmill at the very start. And my wife said, look, that'll just become a clothes horse. You'll never use it. But use it at least 3 times a week. It's great. I'm so glad I did it. And I've gradually built up a home gym now as well. So I won't be going back to another gym anytime soon, I don't think. We have a gym here in John Street in NESS, in our head offices as well.
Yes.
So it's an excellent wee service, but so people haven't been able to use that at the moment, of course. But
no, exactly.
Another thing we've got, yeah.
No, but you've certainly kept up with it, and it's good to see that you're actually using the gym equipment, because you're right, a lot of people buy it and then it just sits in the corner collecting dust. So no, well done to you on that side. So really moving forward again, is a lot of these are really good positives actually. And what would you consider things that you will definitely continue post COVID? Basically, things moving forward, positives. What ideas have you got going into 2021?
Well, I think nothing beats face to face, but I do think that a blended form of working, particularly for some of us that can, will continue. I think have an hour each side of the day on a bus to get into Aberdeen. So I will probably still work a couple of days from home. Aberdeen's where I'm based, but then I travel up to Elgin and down to Dundee as well. Yeah. And then, I'm on the board of Pocklington and Visionary as well. So there's a fair bit of commute around. But so there's positives about, I wouldn't want to do the constantly working from home. I think you do need human contact on a face-to-face basis as well. And we're now back part-time in the office. Well, the resource centres are open, but by appointment only. And we've got a manager in the head office 1 day a week. So Tuesdays is my day usually. And actually, I'm quite excited about coming into the office, which is a bizarre thing. I've been here for 15 years, and I'm now really excited about coming into the office.
Exactly.
So some of that will continue. Some of our team meetings we're starting to continue. We've been developing, I think, we've been developing with some of our more isolated service users, trying to develop them communicating with each other on tablets and so on. That's at an early stage, but we'll want to see that whole thing develop a bit more. And that makes people a bit more independent as well, so they can contact and do a face-to-face with friends and neighbours and so on, and do small group work. So we're looking to try and develop that sort of stuff. So there are efficiencies that we can do, and there are things that we can do to help social isolation in particular. Things like where rehab services are back open again, using social distancing and PPE, and particularly long cane training and all of that. That's not easy, but again, staff who have been really keen, really flexible, and really willing to try things differently. I would say that social workers were right through our rehab staff, right through everybody within the organisation has been flexible, willing to look out of the box. And, I think it's testament to them. We are an Investors in People Gold organisation, so we always take on board what our staff's views, and try where at all possible to try and weave that into our operation. So going forward, that will obviously continue, but I think some form of blended working will still continue as well.
No, absolutely, and I agree with you. It's so important to expand on the things that we already do, and we also will certainly be continue with this new way of doing things. Again, I would never have believed, just from historically, a lot of our clients who would really struggle with the tech, with smartphones, with Zoom and Teams and stuff like that, but they have. Again, people will do things if they're kind of forced to do it. It's the days of, I'm too old for that.
That's right.
That doesn't really work anymore, and it has been refreshing to have a lot of people who, again, I personally wouldn't have expected to embrace technology do just that.
We've got an ICT officer, Charles, who works with us. And he's an amazing character. He is a blind man himself, and he teaches people how to use other specialist software and so on. So visually impaired people, it would be Supernova, which I use, or JAWS, or some of the built-in stuff, particularly with Apple products. He also supports deaf people so that they can use FaceTime, they can sign each other, and all of that sort of stuff. So we've now got Charles back to work as well. We've readjusted his studio to make it COVID compliant. He's only working in Aberdeen at the moment, but he spends his time usually between Elgin and Dundee as well. They're smaller centres, so we don't have the space to create that safer environment there for him to operate in. But that's back working, and I would imagine after this he's going to be really busy. As well, because of the changes in tech, and people there are now seeing how that works.
Yeah, and again, it's something that we're all getting used to. I was just thinking, even just the other day, and it just reminded me when you mentioned Charles. Actually, even from our point of view, the last actual exhibition we did was with yourselves in the week before the lockdown. We managed to get it on, so that again, that was the last time I saw Charles, even on that one. So, and it feels like a lifetime ago already. It really does. So, So is there any other activities or information that you would like to share with us right now, or do you think we've pretty much covered it?
I think that what I would say is just a shout out to some of our funders who have been really flexible with this, and I think that's on the whole been across the board. So we're statutory funders have been really good to work with, and we're added value. We call our charity funded services. We're added value services. Yes. Some of the funders there have been really, really good. Our trust funder has done a phenomenal job in bringing in new money into the organisation, and it's not all COVID either, which is good, because there are special funds specifically for COVID, but other funders are still there and still supporting us, but also being very flexible and saying, yeah, we gave you money for X, but in the current time, we're not too bothered if you use it for Y, as long as you can demonstrate to them how you're using it. And that has been great, because, as I've said, some of our services just haven't been able to operate. So some of the funding from there, we've been able to flex that about a wee bit, just to keep everything going and preparing for when we can open up fully again. And, you know, that day will come. That day will come. It's probably a few months away yet, but that day will come, and we'll gradually see the easing of restrictions. And, you know, hopefully, you know, if we get the winter months past, hopefully we'll see the Scottish Government start to reduce the tiers, and then we'll be able to start to meet up as groups again. So it's been a huge learning experience, but there's been lots of positives. And as I say, particularly with people who've gone out and done fundraising for us, but our staff team throughout the organisation, so flexible, so committed to the cause, if you like, and can only but thank them. I should also mention my board have been really, really brilliant as well, really, really flexible, really supportive of me and the management team, because, you know, you hear folks saying CEO of an organisation can be a bit of a lonely place. It can, but I just haven't experienced that during this pandemic. A great management team, and the people that I directly linked with in the board have been so supportive. They've been really, really good.
Absolutely, everyone's part of the same cogs unit, and we all work together for the better for others on that one. And I think we could all agree with that one. So no, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, Graham. Well, again, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been really good to learn a bit more about what you have been doing during all this one. I think it's always very positive to hear that directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And obviously, we will certainly put in all the relative links for this video as per normal whenever the video goes out on that side, and we'll get that done. But again, I'd just like to thank you very, very much for your time today, and we'll speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul.
Brilliant.